UConn students ushering themselves into Gamble Pavilion to see the new banners, championships in 2014 for the men and women. That's all coming up on ESPNU's Midnight Madness.
The slate is wiped clean. Anticipation meets excitement.
Suleiman. Oh!
Wichita State, 31-0.
Legacies are defined.
McDermott for three. 1,000! Yes, sir!
40-0. Their pursuit of perfection is complete.
Expectations are embraced.
The most overanalyzed team in the history of college basketball.
Aaron Harrison, three. Got it! He did it again!
And surpassed.
From underdog to top dog, the UConn Huskies' fourth national championship.
The wait is over. The race to the ultimate prize begins here.
All the way home! Oh, wow!
A new season starts now.
Welcome to the 2014-15 college basketball season here on ESPNU. I'm Andy Katz along with Jay Williams, Seth Greenberg, and Villanova head coach Jay Wright. Sit back, relax over the next 3 hours. We've got a lot to cover, but first, Jay.
I'm Tim Welsh with the UConn men, where the biggest question for Kevin Ollie and the UConn Huskies is who steps up with the departure of Shabazz Napier to the NBA. We think it will be Ryan Boatwright, and Kevin Ollie hopes it will.
I'm Rebecca Lobo here in Storrs, Connecticut, where the women's team has won 46 games in a row. The fans are looking for another pursuit of perfection and a third consecutive national championship.
As we've seen, it's not always the favorite that ends up winning the national championship. Certainly at the beginning of the season, UConn cut down the nets last April in North Texas because they had Shabazz Napier and went on a great run. We'll talk about this later. Knocked off a very good Villanova team on the way to that. But let's look at
Jay Wright.
we got 3 hours. Let's look at the key players that are returning and those that have departed off of this team. Look, we've talked ad nauseum about Shabazz Napier's impact, but I'd like to focus, Jay, on Niels Gaffey and DeAndre Daniels. How hard will those two to replace?
Well, DeAndre Daniels had a couple of really big-time games last year in the NCAA tournament. He's the reason why they got to the Final Four. And then Niels Gaffey, he's a tough, gritty kid. So that front line, Mita Brima, there's some guys who have that talent, but that's going to be questionable for the Huskies.
I think Niels Gaffey is a hard guy to replace. He's a stretch four that can play three. He's got toughness. He was a ball mover. He could defend multiple positions. Niels Gaffey was a blend guy that made everyone a little bit better. Now you're going to replace him potentially with a freshman, Daniel Hamilton. I mean, that's difficult. And then, you know, Ryan Boatwright, you talk about chemistry. Does he feel like he's going to be Shabazz Napier? No, he's got to be Ryan Boatwright. Rodney Purvis has got to be Rodney Purvis. And they got to figure out how this group, not last year's group, but this group, how the pieces fit together.
Yeah, and they can't try to replace Shabazz Napier. That's a great point. We know as coaches, guys try to look at the team before them and say, that guy was great, he was a first-round pick, I want to be him. And that is a challenge for Kevin Ollie. The length of Gaffey and Daniels, we as coaches, we can coach them up and teach technique defensively, but the best thing you can do defensively is be long and mobile. And those two guys were really long and mobile, and they defended the three and rebounded, and both of them hit threes. So they've got a lot to replace. Napier and those two. Kevin's got a great challenge because everyone's going to expect you to repeat. They're going to talk about that. And you lost three great pieces.
Hey, they do have Sam Cassell Jr., and he's a JUCO transfer, and it's a different style of game. He's not going to play like Shabazz Napier. He's a little bit more slow. He's methodical. Very much reminds me of his father. He just takes his time.
Really. Old man's game.
Yeah, understands how to get to positions on the court when he wants to get there. So he could be a huge part for them.
I'm just happy that he mentioned length, because Billis isn't here, and we got length into the conversation. You know, in the first segment. That's very impressive.
When you have to play against them and they're guarding you, you remember the length.
And it was probably one of the best things Kevin Ollie did last season was getting Ryan Boatwright to buy in and to accept his role, and now he's got to obviously change it a little going forward this season. All right, UConn unveiling its men's and women's national championship banners from 2014. Pretty unique experience for the UConn Huskies in Storrs, Connecticut. Let's look again at the men's program and who left and who is returning. Shabazz Napier certainly was outstanding for UConn, leading the national championship. DeAndre Daniels, Niels Gaffey, key glue guys, and Daniels was huge in the Madison Square Garden games against Iowa State and Michigan State. So let's head over to UConn for a little preview of the evening.
Napier from downtown.
Another one for Brianna Stewart. We have witnessed women's college basketball history.
That is it, from underdog to top dog.
Welcome to Storrs, Connecticut, the home of champions. Quite literally, dual champions from a season ago. The Huskies pulling off the men's and women's sweep that only they had ever done before 1 decade earlier. Tonight, one of the great fan bases in college basketball on hand inside Gamble Pavilion for Midnight Madness. Hi, everybody. Kevin Connors, Tim Welsh, UConn legend Rebecca Lobo, delighted to be with you for the start of a new season of college basketball. We've got a great night in store tonight. We'll see both teams scrimmaging against one another. Tim, let's start talking about the men's team. The quest for a repeat, big shoes to fill in the loss of Shabazz Napier.
Well, Shabazz Napier was probably the best player in college basketball at the end of last season. He led UConn to the title, but really the reason they won the title and they came over the top was Ryan Boatwright. Ryan Boatwright's on-ball defense in the NCAA tournament was as good as it gets, and with his defense and his pressure led to easy baskets for UConn in their transition game. He's a jet quick guard. He's going to have to be more aggressive offensively. Always leadership on the floor is so important. He's matured his senior season. I think he's ready to take the lead of this ship for Kevin Ollie. He needs it. There's a lot of young players in this program, but I think he's ready to step up.
We look forward to seeing Ryan Boatwright and many of the new faces on the men's side in action. And as we turn from Tim Welsh to one of the greatest to ever play at UConn, Rebecca Lobo. Speaking of big shoes to fill, Gino Auriemma has that on his team, but he also has one of the greatest to ever play here at UConn in Brianna Stewart.
Well, Gino Auriemma has said that before it's all said and done, Brianna Stewart could be the best player to wear a UConn uniform. She is the most unique player in women's college basketball. 6'4" with a 7'1" wingspan, but she has guard skills, can put the ball on the floor, hit three-point shots, a great finisher inside, and she is punishing on the defensive end, an outstanding shot blocker. She is by far the best women's player in the college game.
And they call it the capital of college basketball, and they have bragging rights right now. Dual national championships, and they will unfurl the banners for both teams coming up here. We'll see you tonight on ESPNU, and also complete coverage 7 Eastern on ESPN3.
All right, thank you, Kevin, Tim, and Rebecca. All right, Ryan Boatwright, arguably one of the top point guards in the country, but Jay, a little bit of a kind of new kind of point guard in college basketball. How's that?
Well, Ryan Boatwright is one of my top 5 point guards in the country, and I think you're starting to see a lot more of these guards are trying to score. When you look at the NBA guards, that's what guys are doing. You know, a lot of guys, when they play defensively, you can't allow guards to go under screens anymore. You have to be able to shoot. And when you look at some of these things, the ability to get teammates involved, lead by example, you know, verbally direct, create off the dribble for teammates, opportunities for yourself, especially in pick and roll situations, under control while also being aggressive, speed with vision, IQ, and you combine that with scoring ability. You know, actually, I think the top point guard in the country, and he may not even be a point guard this year, due to the fact that another top point guard has came to their team in Joel Berry, is Marcus Page. Marcus Page last year led North Carolina in scoring and assist. And his ability to hunt his shot last year was something that was critical, but it took a lot out of him. But when you think about him, you think about Daylon Wright from Utah, you think about Ryan Boatwright, you think about Fred VanVleet. Fred VanVleet actually might be the only true traditional point guard in my top 5 point guards. And then you combine him with the fact of a guy like Kiefer Sykes, who is freakishly athletic. He's one of the top guards in the country, plays for Wisconsin Green Bay. He averaged around 20.5 points per game last year and 5 assists. So you're starting to see these guards blossom into not only pass guards, but also guys who are able to score a lot of points.
When I look at guards today, I don't think there's a point guard role. I think there are ball guards. And to me, what a ball guard is, a ball guard can be a play starter, a playmaker, but he can also score, get in the lane and play. He can come off a ball screen hard, get downhill and get into the lane. He can also read all 5 defenders and make the right pass. So what you're talking about is in the NBA, and college always mimics the NBA, you're playing with more spread offenses. And you're playing with more spread ball screens. So your point guard is not only a playmaker, a scorer, and a guy that can get in the lane. They're ball guards, not point guards.
I agree, and I think you gave a great list of 5, except Ryan Arcidiacono from Villanova.
I forgot. I'm sorry, I forgot.
Scoring guards. But I also think you were one of the first guys that did this. You know, you played the point, but you averaged over 20 points a game. And I think you kind of set the tone that way in college basketball. I think international basketball affected the guards having to be scorers. Because when you played those international teams and they ran pick and roll, those point guards could shoot threes, which opened up the role for the bigs. I think it's just the evolution of the game. The three-point shot has dictated that you can't have a point guard out there anymore that you don't have to guard from 3. And when you guard that point guard from 3, it opens everybody else up. So you're right about these new point guards. When we're recruiting now, it's tough if you're looking at a point guard that can't shoot threes. You want guys that can shoot threes, and it's even going to the 4 and 5 men now. Yeah. You want guys that can shoot threes.
Jay, you guys faced UConn in the 3rd round of the NCAA tournament. They beat you guys on the way to the NCAA tournament. Ryan Boatwright had to play off of Shabazz Napier. How do you think he'll handle being the focal point on the perimeter?
I think he's been waiting for this. I think he's the kind of kid that really enjoys this. We talked about this a little bit earlier. You know, as a coach, you don't want him to feel like he has to be Shabazz Napier. And if he doesn't lead them to the national championship, he's not as good. You know, but the thing is, last year in our game against UConn, you can take everything that happened. Bottom line, we couldn't guard both of them. And one of them got hot, and Napier hit 3 threes in a row from way outside the scoring area. And that was the game. That was it. But it was because they had both of them on the floor. If they can get one of those other guards, Purvis or Calhoun, to shoot it with him, I think he could have an outstanding year.
I think Ryan Boatwright's strength is his ability to disrupt on the defensive end. I think that's where he can really make a big impact. He can sit down in a stance and take you out of offense. And then offensively, he gets downhill and he can get in the lane. He's got all kinds of layups. Great guards have a lot of different layups. He's not the three-point shooter that Shabazz Napier is. He's got to be Ryan Boatwright. But, you know, Jay Will, you averaged 20 points a game and 6 assists. So if you weren't shooting it, basically you're throwing it for an assist.
But yes, pretty much.
Just trying to figure it out.
Well, the only numbers he knew.
Last year, having DeAndre Daniels, he was the perfect player to be involved in ball screens. He was perfect for Ryan Boatwright, Shabazz Napier. Because, look, you have to play over the top of the screen. If I bump you, now I put the big guarding DeAndre Daniels in a compromising position because he has to come up and guard me, which allows DeAndre Daniels to pick and pop, knock down those threes. So that opens up the lane for guards, too. Who is going to be that person this year for UConn?
I think they're going to go small. I think it's going to end up being Daniel Hamilton. I think they're going to play more perimeters. I don't see Kenton Facey be a pick and pop 4. So they're going to have to play different. If not, you're going to see people just pushing up on those ball screens, going under, or blitzing and getting the ball out of Ryan Boatwright's hands, just getting it out of his hands. He's not the jump shooter Shabazz is. So, I mean, you can go under on him and force him to be a three-point shooter.
You know what's going to help UConn? No Louisville. Louisville was a school that certainly caused a lot of problems for the UConn Huskies. Louisville now off to the ACC. The American Athletic Conference has a number of new schools in it. East Carolina, Tulsa, they are joining this conference, as well as Tulane. The return of SMU. By the way, Emmanuel Mudiay, first game in China, he would have been at SMU. 21 points, 5 assists, so UConn doesn't have to face a Nick Moore-Mudiay backcourt at SMU. But I think we can safely say that UConn-SMU, do we say that they're the 2 favorites in the American?
Don't sleep on Cincinnati. I spoke to Mick Cronin today. He absolutely loves his basketball team. Remember this name, Gary Clark, 6'8", can step out and make shots, protects the rim, rebounds. Troy Copain. Now that Sean Kirkpatrick's gone, Troy Copain, he's a big physical guard, the type that, quite honestly, Mick Cronin likes. He loves his team. They're athletic, they're long, they play hard, they're going to check you every possession. Don't count out the Bearcats.
If we're dropping some names, you know, a McDonald's All-American, actually the first one ever to go to SMU, Keith Frazier. I think Keith Frazier is on the verge for a blow-up year. Last year, it takes players a while to get adjusted to the speed of college basketball, especially at the point guard spot. And when I'm used to scoring a lot of points, and all of a sudden I come into a game, and Seth, you're my coach, or Jay, you're my coach, all of a sudden I'm being an extension of you on the court, and I'm supposed to be worried about, is Marcus Kennedy in the right spot? Is Nick Moore getting enough touches? It's a lot to handle mentally. It's not until the game slows down into that second year that a guy like Keith Frazier can come into his own.
And Yannick Barea, if I'm hopefully pronouncing that correctly, had a great FIBA World Cup. So he returns for SMU as well. And UConn certainly changing their schedule where they're getting more tougher non-conference games because of the conference they're in right now. They're going to play Texas at home. They play Duke in the Meadowlands. They're down in Puerto Rico. They return their game to Florida and Stanford. So a lot of challenges for Kevin Ollie and their crew.
You got to check it out.
Ray Allen, a UConn great, certainly won his share of championships in the NBA, getting honored tonight at UConn as the men and the women are about to unveil their 2014 national championship banners at Gampel Pavilion in stores. Let's take a look at the key players that have left and those that are returning for the UConn women as they try to win the national championship yet again. Breanna Stewart is back for the Huskies, arguably the top player in women's college basketball. And Jay Wright, a fellow native of Philadelphia, Gino Auriemma, continues to win at a high level in the women's game, dominating the women's game, wins at the international level for the United States, coaching the women's national team. You've known Gino for quite a while. How has he been able to dominate the women's game so well?
Well, first of all, we take great pride in Philadelphia, in Gino. We claim him, even though he's been in Connecticut for a long time. But he had a house at the Jersey Shore, and he gave it up, and he officially got a house on the Connecticut Shore. So he's given up on Philly. Once you give up that Jersey Shore house, you've given up on Philly.
He's probably still an Eagles fan, though.
He's all Connecticut now. He's all Connecticut. And we still love him, and his wife, Kathy, we love him. I'll tell you what, he works at recruiting. Jim Boeheim's the same way. He is at the top of the game, and he still works at recruiting harder than anybody. Jim Boeheim does it. People wouldn't know it. But he's got great players because he goes and gets them. He's not relaxing and saying, well, UConn, come here. He really works hard at recruiting. He's a great coach, too.
Jay, I was going to ask you, how difficult is it for you as head coaches these days? Because, you know, back in 1999, 2000, when I saw Johnny Dawkins or Tommy Amaker, who were assistants at Duke at my game, I got excited. But now these kids want to see the head coach at all their games. I've even had kids tell me in the past, well, one coach only came to 3 of my games, and the second coach came to 10 of my games. And that was the decision factor. I mean, how does that play into the role?
Head coaches are playing a much bigger role in recruiting because it's almost like free agency. They're looking at your roster. They know who's leaving, who's staying. They want to sit down with the head coach, and they want to hear, like, you're the general manager. Where do I fit in? And if you're not at their games, they don't feel like, you know, you're interested enough. It's just like the NBA guys have to recruit the free agents. They got to spend time with them. Coaches got to sit down and talk with them.
In the end, the head coach decides who plays, who doesn't play, what your role is, and how many shots you get. So if you're an elite recruit, you want to make a decision on that head coach. Assistant coach can make all the promises he wants. In the end, the head coach has to make that decision. And you want to hear from the head coach, you know what? You're getting shots, and we like your role.
Let's get a live look into UConn as they announce, looks like a WNBA All-Star team. Former UConn women's basketball players certainly doing an amazing job giving back to the community, giving back to UConn's women's program. Jay, I want to just ask you, the kind of alumni that they have in that program for Gino Auriemma, I mean, how do you match that if you're any other women's basketball program in the country?
Well, you can't, and that's why they're winning national championships consecutively, because Gino also creates, he's got that Italian heritage that creates the family atmosphere, and I worked for Rolly Massimino. He did the same thing. Those girls are coached well, they play well, and they're a family, and they stick together, and you can see how they all come back, and they support this program.
Well, look at that, lining up national championships trophies, Seth.
It's almost embarrassing, really. I mean, what Gino's been able to do, think about where UConn was. It's amazing what Jim Calhoun's done, all right, and then Kevin Ollie. But when you think about Gino Auriemma, and there was basically not a women's basketball program. And now he, like, lines a whole table with championship trophies.
Let's listen in to Sean Miller. All right, let's go back out to UConn in Storrs, Connecticut at Gamble Pavilion. Kevin Ollie, the head coach of the men's team. Gino Auriemma, the head coach of the women's team. You got a Hall of Famer on the left. And on the right, Kevin Ollie, in only his second season as a head coach, he wins the national championship.
The job Kevin Ollie did last year was, to me, incredible. He brought his team along. He defined roles. He got Shabazz Napier and Ryan Boatwright to trust each other and play for the good of the group. Did a terrific job.
All right, let's listen live to Kevin Ollie addressing the students at Gamble.
Once again, I want to acknowledge one of the greatest coaches, Gino Auriemma, for his 9th championship. His gold medal 3 weeks ago. Just a great coach, but most importantly, a better person. We want to, at the end of the day, when we come in this gym and when we walk out of that tunnel, it's something special about being here. I played here, I sweated here, I cried here, I bled here, and it was all for UConn. So we want to thank y'all. Make sure you keep it staying loud. And one thing, before I put the mic down and we want to recognize our players, people are scared to play us in here because of you. Because of you. People scared to play us in here. So we appreciate y'all. Have a wonderful night. Make sure y'all stay and be loud, and make sure y'all continue cheering us on. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Hey, before we go any further, I know he got a huge ovation, and you saw him shoot the ball. And we have a poster in the back, I think. It says the greatest three-point shooter in the history of basketball, maybe. So you got to understand one thing. Every one of those shots that Ray took was a pass from Kevin. And Coach Calhoun used to give Ray an assist when he missed a shot and somebody rebounded and put it back up. Which wasn't often. I think Kevin said it best. We're very fortunate that we get to coach in what it's going to say here, what it's going to become, what it has become, and what it will always be. The basketball capital of the world. And I said this last year because the students, and I know we have a lot of great fans, and I know that they come from all over the state of Connecticut and all over New England and all over the country. I know that. But I think the students, I said this last year, and I mean it even more now after watching what you guys did last year for the guys and what you did for us. You all had a chance, some of you, to sit there in front of your televisions when you were younger, and some of you, not students, you remember Ray, and you remember Kevin playing, and the rest of you, you've grown up watching Connecticut basketball on television. And now, you have an opportunity to be here and to firsthand become part of the future of Connecticut basketball starting this November and carrying both teams to another national championship. Thank you.
All right, UConn men's and women's teams winning national championships, the men winning it in North Texas, the women winning it in Nashville. But I want to go back to Kevin Ollie, Jay. He was put in a very difficult situation. He gets the temporary contract, essentially a 7-month deal, when Jim Calhoun retires. And then midway through that year, he gets a long-term deal, wins the national championship in only his 2nd season as a head coach. How do you think he did that?
Well, I know that in Jim Calhoun's mind, he was going to be the man. I remember sitting at an AAU tournament in Washington, D.C. when Kevin was an assistant. I used to sit with Jim when we were recruiting, and he grabbed me one time and he said, "This guy's the next coach. He's a superstar." And I'm sure Jim helped him through that early period and said, "Hey, this is coaching. Okay, they're not going to hand it to you. They gave you an opportunity. Just take advantage of it just like you did as a player." And I know Jim takes great pride in Kevin. I saw him at the NCAA tournament. We played in the same spot. And I know he guided him through that. And Kevin handled it very well. And I know Kevin takes great pride in having Jim around. It's a really unique situation. You know, when John Wooden was around UCLA, that was intimidating to a lot of people. Jim Calhoun does a great job with Kevin and vice versa. It's really a unique situation in college athletics.
And what we've seen is that initially Jim Calhoun was hovering. You know, he was there quite a bit at practice, games, and last season, as the season went along, he took his trips, I think, down to South Carolina or Florida, and started to pull back a little. Seth, how do you think that relationship sort of changed over the course of last year in terms of him pulling back a little bit?
I think early on, Jim was evaluating how much Kevin needed him. And then once he realized, you know what, he's got this thing under control, it's his team, in his personality. Kevin Ollie is doing some similar things, but make no mistake about it, this is his basketball program. Offensively, defensively, it's more of an NBA feel than maybe a college feel, and he played for some great NBA coaches. So what Kevin Ollie's been able to do, he's taken a little bit from all the people that he's played for and Coach Calhoun, and he's coaching this UConn team in his own personality with great ownership, great passion, and those guys play for him. Make no mistake about it.
Jay, I was going to ask you here, in the offseason, there was a lot of chatter that he was going to go to the NBA, and there were NBA franchises looking at him. Why do you think he stayed?
Because that's home. And I've known Kevin Ollie since I was 21 years old when I came into the NBA. And I used to drive from Chicago to Milwaukee to watch tape with Kevin Ollie. And it was fascinating for me 2 years ago when we called the game in Germany. On the plane ride back, he sat there with Shabazz Napier and watched tape individually for 3.5 hours. I mean, Shabazz had a piece of paper, a pen, and was taking down notes. And that's the kind of relationship. The same guy that you just saw chest bump, Ray Allen, that's the kind of competitor he is. And player, he's a player's coach. But please, don't get things confused. When things get down to the nitty-gritty, he will be in your face because he will challenge you. He knows players are better. He has no problem getting in your face and telling you how to be better.
He's a fierce competitor. Yes, he is. I'm talking about a fierce competitor. And he might be the best guard in the gym right now. I mean, no doubt about it. In terms of the NBA, great in special situations.
Yeah, but Andy, you know what? What we watched right there, watching Gino, watching Ray Allen, watching Kevin, in that environment, you get that feel. I get chills watching that in that environment. That's why he stays in college. Certain guys love that. They love, like John Calipari. If he really didn't love that, this big blue thing tonight and what you do for Midnight Madness, if you just like the NBA, that doesn't mean anything to you. But if you're a college guy, you're worried about your guys, but you really love that. You love being a part of that atmosphere, that campus, that family, and you could see that at UConn. I'm sitting there thinking, I got to recruit against that, man. I'm watching those guys. But that's what we got at Villanova. You got that family. Everybody comes back, and that's why you coach in college. You love being a part of that family, and no matter where those guys play in the NBA, they always come back. They come back to their family. I really think Kevin loves that.
And we don't throw this around lightly, but Kevin Ollie is a winner and a tremendous mentor in the community and also for those UConn players from the past and those that are playing for him this season. All right, but we're going to get back to discussing a little bit more of the ACC because right now they're about to unveil the banners for an old Syracuse rival at UConn, the 2014 banners for the men and the women. There they go. This is first for the men. Look at that, 99, 2004, 2011, 2014. As UConn won the national championship. Jay, Will, how crazy was it last year that they won the national championship?
The first 7 seed to ever win the NCAA tournament. And I don't think anybody thought that UConn would actually win it at the beginning of the tournament. And look, we thought Shabazz Napier was
should have lost to St. Joe's.
Ryan Boatwright was a really good player. DeAndre Daniels was a good player, but we all thought they lacked size up front. And would they be able to rebound? But those guards found a way to come together, and Shabazz Napier and Ryan Boatwright were sensational.
I kept on picking against them. They kept on winning. I had to put my house up for sale.
Hey, I was sitting in Buffalo scouting the game, St. Joe, UConn, because we were going to play the winner. And I'm sitting there watching that game thinking, well, we're probably going to play St. Joe. They just didn't look like they could do it. They get a three-point play from a freshman big man who hadn't scored all year. But the one thing I would say about that is Kevin Ollie all year, when he spoke, he always spoke like he believed they could do it. I didn't believe it during the middle of the year, but you never doubted that he did, and I think that really transferred to his players.
You are wearing a Final Four ring, is that right? Or
this is actually our Big East Championship ring from 06, because I made a mistake when we went to the Final Four, and I let the players design the ring. Okay. The ring's so big that I can't wear it. So I have to wear an 06 Big East Championship ring.
Well, you mentioned the victory over St. Joe's, and that was down, or basically rebound goes the other way, and UConn doesn't win that game. I go back to a game in Boston, the year you guys went to the Final Four against Pitt. Jamie Dixon probably doesn't want to remember that game. But to win a national championship, to even just get to the Final Four, how much do you need one of those last possession games to get over that hump?
Every team's got it. And there's some point along your run where you think we're out of it. And then you get that second life, and it kind of gives you the belief that, all right, whatever happens now, we're winning this thing. We're winning it. And that's what happens when you get to the Final Four and you lose. You're crushed. You're crying, crushed, because you've gone through that game when you thought you were out of it, and then you really believe when you get to the Final Four, we're winning this. There's no doubt. So when you lose, it's crushing.
Terry Holland said to our team in '84 when Virginia went to the Final Four, now we barely beat Arkansas, we barely beat Iona, we barely beat Indiana, and thank goodness we played Indiana. Thank you, Dan Dockich, because they beat North Carolina. But we get to the Final Four, and before the game, I remember him walking into the locker room and saying, if we don't give everything we can to find a way to win this game, you'll never feel worse any time in your life. And I remember walking into the game, we lose overtime to Hakeem Olajuwon in that semifinal game, and it was such an empty feeling because our guys figured we would figure out a way to get to the championship game.
You know, what's the game, though, that you remember most to get to a Final Four?
To get to a Final Four, probably was a game we played against UCLA. I was going against one of the best defenders in the nation, a guy named Earl Watson.
How many you drop on him?
Well, we had some fun. We found a way to win the game.
Humble guy, Jay Will.
Going to the Final Four, you know, Jay, you said something that I think was absolutely brilliant. And I think these are the things that great coaches are able to do with their players. You get a player to get outside of himself. You know, we were in the Final Four against Maryland. We were down 22 points at halftime. And we all came into the locker room. We were all in our own heads. Everybody individually, not collectively. And it was a great inspiring speech to get us outside of ourselves. And, you know, when you believe in each other, that's something so special because it takes a certain amount of luck to win a Final Four. It does, but you have to believe in yourself first in order to have that luck occur.
Andy Katz, thanks very much. Welcome to Gamble Pavilion in Storrs, Connecticut, the site of Midnight Madness for the UConn Huskies as they celebrate dual national championships, the men and women winning national championships last April. Only time that had ever been done before in the history of college basketball. UConn did it a decade earlier. Kevin Connors, Tim Welsh, Rebecca Lobo, Jeff Goodman, delighted to be with you as we get set for the start of the blue-white scrimmage here. Team Kevin versus Team Gmo. And Tim Welsh, as we just talked about, it's A lineup comprised of both the men's and women's team. What are you looking forward to seeing from these two teams here tonight?
Well, we really know what Team Gino and his women can do. Gino talked about some of those young freshmen and see how they run up and down the floor a little bit, kind of get a feel for the game. But, looking at Rodney Purvis, his recovery from the shoulder surgery a year ago for Kevin Ollie's team. He sat out a year as well, the transfer from NC State. They're going to need him to be a scorer on the wing. Watching practice yesterday, he looks a little bit rusty out there on the floor. I think he's thinking a little bit too much. Kevin Ollie wants him to just play out there on the floor. Another key person for UConn this year is Sam Cassell Jr. We won't see him tonight. He suffered a lower leg contusion in practice. Nothing serious, but they're keeping him out of this game. Another big player for UConn this season with the loss of Napier.
Well, Rebecca Lobo, these are both defending national championship winning coaches, and I know that they're good friends on and off the court here, but I would imagine that this matchup, there's some bragging rights on the line here.
Yeah, they'll be talking trash to each other. Last year, Coach Oriama's team went down early, but they were able to come back probably because they had Shabazz, and I think Kevin Ollie wants to get his turn to win one here tonight.
As we get set to jump it up, you see big Amita Brima. Kevin Ollie will be counting on him this season. Amita's not jumping it up right here. Maybe in the interest of fairness. Our first look here in the new college basketball season at Brianna Stewart, defending National Player of the Year, Most Outstanding Player in the NCAA tournament from a season ago. We've been waiting about an hour as all the festivities have gone down here, celebrating both championships. The banners have been unfurled, the trophies brought out, the fans are ready to go. We're ready to go. The blue-white scrimmage is underway, and the tap controlled by Team Gino. Rebecca, are we seeing any offenses run today? What's the strategy?
Well, the UConn women have only been practicing for 2 days, but I think Coach Oriama would like to see them get the guys involved in some pick and roll, some of your basic type of basketball.
Tim Welsh, here is Rodney Purvis. What kind of game does he have?
That's his game right there. Attack the rim. He's kind of a bulldog guard, kind of plays that wing guard spot. Not a great ball handler or shooter, but he's got to go a little stronger to the rim, especially with a guy like Brima around the rim, protecting it. Brima showing a little offense at the other end, first with the jumper and then with the dunk.
There's Purvis throwing it down at the other end. Neat to see Brima on the boards there, and Brianna Stewart looking around like, hey, whose man is that? Notable size advantage here for Team Blue. 3 on the way by Morgan Tuck. A bit too strong. Here is Omar Calhoun, and Tim, they're going to need a big season out of him.
Well, very disappointing year. A year ago, and at the end really was out of the mix, but a lot of people thought here in the UConn program that he might leave and go to kind of a mid-major type school, but give Omar Calhoun all the credit in the world. He stuck with it. He was here all summer, really worked on his game, and looked very impressive yesterday in practice, confident from that wing. He's trying to get those minutes back that he lost a year ago.
Boatwright off the dribble. Rebecca, a good-looking move by Ryan Boatwright.
I think you'll see a lot of that from the men's players. Fearless, driving down the lane. The women might settle for more jump shots, knowing they got Brima inside.
Boatwright started 76 of 94 games in his UConn career as Calhoun gets it into the middle of the paint. Calhoun will try a 3 and connect.
Well, that's his forte, and that's what we didn't see a year ago. There's that confidence from that jump shot from the perimeter, but he looks healthy. He came off the hip surgery from a year ago, and it really hampered him all year. He never got into a rhythm last season.
There's McKenna Lewis getting into a rhythm right away. Rebecca, she has the ability to light it up. 13.5 points, 5.5 rebounds a season ago.
Yeah, and that was a down season for Kalina Mosqueda-Lewis. 2 years ago, she led the nation in three-point percentage. She is a terrific three-point shooter. Remember, they're playing with the men's ball tonight, so slightly larger than the one the women are accustomed to.
How about Mariah Jefferson challenging Brima? Good-looking feed and cut that time, and we see Sanaya Chong on the board.
That's UConn women's basketball right there, making the extra pass. Nice cut to the basket by Chong.
Chong, a relatively local product out of Ossining, New York. Tim.
Well, Kevin and Rebecca, you know, we all have talked about the great new practice facility right next door, and they had a tour of that yesterday and today. And so the nice thing is that you could come and watch both teams practice. You can stay for an hour and watch Kevin's team, and you can walk over to see Gino. And we did that yesterday, and just the execution of Gino Auriemma's team, even their second day of practice, is so impressive. Everything is on point, even with their young freshmen. I mean, just like watching a clinic, watching his team run offense.
Rebecca, you played for him, and listen, obviously, you talk about a 9-time national championship winning coach. We see him in the Final Four just about every year. If you could describe his coaching style, how would you do it?
Demanding. I mean, he demands a lot from his players. He demands excellence not only during games, but in every practice. And, you know, even in a scrimmage like this, he's going to go away with it, telling his players what they needed to work on to be better at it the next day.
As you take a look at Purvis in the open court, and then Ryan Boatwright. Tim, one of the challenges this year is going to be defining roles for this UConn team. I mean, a season ago, it was Shabazz Napier's team, and there were a lot of other pieces that bought into their roles. How does Kevin Ollie get his team to buy into roles?
Well, he did a tremendous job with that last year. He kind of mixed and matched his team until he finally found the right chemistry. And listen, Shabazz Napier was there from the get-go. You knew what he was going to bring you. But guys like Niels Gaffai and Lassane Chroma and then DeAndre Daniels, what he did at the end of last year, so important to what UConn did and their success. But Ryan Boatwright, his on-ball defense in the NCAA tournament was as good as you could find, and that was so important. And I was impressed yesterday in practice with Boatwright's ability to even stop practice and teach the whole team where they're supposed to be. And Kevin Ollie said, listen, I want him to accept and embrace the role as our senior leader. And you could see Kevin kind of handing him the torch that Napier had from a year ago.
Rebecca, we just got to see Tierney Lawler knock down a three. A great lineage at UConn with both of her parents being Huskies alums. What is Gino looking at Tierney Lawler? What is he looking at from her this year?
To be a lot of energy coming in off the bench, a walk-on player from a season ago. Well, I think right now...
All right, a lot more to come here on ESPNU Midnight Madness. Gino coaching Team Gino, Team Kevin for Kevin Ollie, a little male and female college basketball at UConn. We'll get back to Kentucky, certainly coming up.
Every single drill so that they can continue the culture of championships.
Daughter of Kevin Ollie. Three of his brothers.
We'll get you right back to Kentucky, but now we're going to check in on UConn. Listening to Kevin Connors here with Rebecca Lobo.
Guys, thanks from Lexington, Kentucky to Storrs, Connecticut, the home of dual national champions, UConn men's and women's team. Kevin Connors, Tim Welsh, Rebecca Lobo with you. Blue-white scrimmage going on. The team's comprised of players from both squads. This is Omar Calhoun with the basketball. Drops it off, Phil Nolan. Tim Welsh, who's put on a lot of size here in the offseason.
Well, it's important because Nolan needs to be a physical presence up front. And rebounding has been an issue here at UConn the last 2 years. And Shabazz Napier was their leading rebounder. And Niels Gaffai and Lassane Chroma provided good toughness along with DeAndre Daniels, guys that could go up and kind of team rebound. So Daniels is going to have to be a guy that plays up on the backboards, not only at the 4 spot, but probably the 5 as well.
Rebecca, we just saw Natalie Butler finish on the break.
Yeah, impressive. This is her game for the season. She has to sit out this year, transfer rules. She comes from Georgetown, but she's been working really hard, knowing that she's not going to get in this kind of competitive environment for a long time.
Rakeem Lubin throwing it down, freshman out of Miami. There's Nolan getting the shooters, the friendly role here inside Campo Pavilion. We take a look back at some of the highlights here from what we've seen so far. The tremendous feed from Mariah Jefferson. Rebecca, you made a point. She's not used to throwing alley-oops.
Yeah, these women aren't used to playing on a court with a lot of dunks going on, but they've fit in nicely. That was a beautiful play.
And then Anita Brima catching one off the window in transition. And I guess we shouldn't be surprised that this game is now tied at 31, right? equal squads, two great coaches, both national champions.
Yeah, last 4.5 minutes, they're trying to win this ball game.
Well, truth be told, though, Gino Auriemma hasn't had a game this close at this time of year since before Rebecca Lobo came to school.
As Morgan Tuck drills a three, there is the 9-time national championship winning coach, Gino Auriemma. Rebecca, how tough is it to just crack the lineup at some point for Gino's team with the assemblage of talent that he has on the roster?
It's harder to get him to stop yelling at you. You know, I think it just breeds such competitiveness in practice every day, and it's one of the reasons they can stay competitive in games when the score is no longer so even in the first half. There's just a culture of winning, and players want to get their minutes, and they know if they don't, somebody's going to come off the bench and take them from them.
It's interesting you say that, Rebecca. I came to practice a year ago, 2 years ago, when Brianna was a freshman, and sat in for about an hour. And after practice, I said to Gino, I said, "Wow, she's special. She's everything that's been written about her." And he said, "She's okay."
Well, we talked about it in the Open. She's okay is maybe a little bit of an understatement, because when you think about the players who have come through here, and Rebecca, you said she may, when it's all said and done, be the best to ever play here.
Well, more importantly, Gino has said that she could be the best that's ever played here. And you think about the people who have played here, you know, Maya Moore, Diana Taurasi, but especially if Brianna Stewart wins 4 national championships, I don't know how you could say it's anybody else.
There's Purvis finishing things off, the NC State transfer, who will play a key role in the rotation for Kevin Ollie this season.
A lot of people think he'll be the starter at the 2 guard. I really think Sam Cassell Jr. may get that nod and kind of play a two-headed point guard system. For people looking for him tonight, he's out with a lower leg contusion. Nothing serious. He did it yesterday in practice. He's wearing a boot on the end of the team.